You think modern horror is scary? Try living in medieval Europe, where your daily commute involved dodging werewolves, your neighbors might secretly be witches, and the guy treating your plague symptoms looked like a literal demon from hell. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where horror wasn't entertainment, it was Tuesday. What's up, history lovers? Today we're exploring how medieval people basically invented every horror trope we know and love, except they genuinely believed this stuff was real. Netflix wishes it could create content this terrifying, but medieval Europe was living in a 24/7 horror movie with no intermission and definitely no happy endings. Spoiler alert. Modern horror directors are basically plagiarizing medieval nightmares, and medieval people would find our scary movies adorably quaint. Let's start with werewolves, because medieval Europe was absolutely obsessed with the idea that your neighbor might transform into a bloodthirsty wolf monster. This wasn't folklore. This was genuine, widespread terror that made people carry silver and avoid full moons. Medieval werewolf stories make modern lycanthrope movies look like Disney films. We're talking about people believing that werewolves would dig up fresh graves to eat corpses, attack children in their beds, and that becoming a werewolf was punishment for moral corruption. Hollywood werewolves are tortured souls, struggling with their dual nature. Medieval werewolves were just straight-up cannibalistic murderers who happened to grow fur. The Beast of Gévaudan in 18th century France allegedly killed over 100 people, and entire communities organized armed hunts because they genuinely believed a werewolf was terrorizing the countryside. The werewolf panic was so widespread that it had its own legal framework. Courts across Europe tried and executed people for lycanthropy. Imagine explaining to your insurance company that your house was destroyed in a werewolf attack and having them actually investigate the claim. The irony is that plague doctor costumes probably made medical treatment more terrifying than the actual disease. Imagine being sick and having a literal nightmare bird person show up to poke you with a stick. That's not healthcare, that's psychological warfare. The scariest part, medieval people had detailed instructions for identifying werewolves among your friends and family. Basically, medieval Europe had a werewolf paranoia manual. Now let's talk about demons, because medieval people believed they were literally everywhere, all the time, trying to steal your soul through increasingly creative methods. Modern horror movies wish they could create antagonists this persistent and terrifying. Medieval demonology was incredibly sophisticated. They had organizational charts for hell, job descriptions for different types of demons, and detailed instruction manuals for demonic possession. It was like a corporate structure for supernatural evil, complete with middle management demons and entry-level tempters. Medieval people believed demons could possess your livestock, spoil your food, cause nightmares, make you impotent, and even hide your keys. Basically, every minor inconvenience was potential demonic interference. Lost your wallet? Demons. Bad harvest? Demons. Stubbed your toe? Definitely demons. The medieval bestseller Malleus Maleficarum was essentially a demon hunting manual that made medieval people paranoid about supernatural threats in their daily lives. It's like if someone wrote a serious academic paper about how ghosts are definitely trying to steal your Netflix password. Medieval people had detailed battle plans for fighting demons, including specific prayers, holy water tactics, and protective symbols. They were basically running a medieval Ghostbusters operation, except the stakes were eternal damnation. But the real horror masterpiece was witch trial mass hysteria, where entire communities would lose their minds and start accusing each other of supernatural crimes. It's like if Twitter cancel culture involved actual burning at stakes instead of just social media shame. The Salem witch trials were just the most famous example of a phenomenon that terrorized Europe for centuries. Between 1450 and 1750, an estimated 40,000–60,000 people were executed for witchcraft. That's more deaths than most horror movie franchises combined. Medieval witch hunters used evidence that would make modern conspiracy theorists look rational. Floating in water meant you were a witch. Having a birthmark meant you were a witch. Owning a cat definitely meant you were a witch. Being old and female was basically a witch conviction waiting to happen. The Malleus Maleficarum provided detailed instructions for identifying witches, including examining women's bodies for devil's marks and using torture to extract confessions. It was essentially a how-to guide for community-wide paranoid delusions. The scariest part is how quickly these panics spread. One accusation could trigger months of community-wide terror, neighbor turning against neighbor, families destroyed by supernatural paranoia. It's like if QAnon had legal authority to execute people. Entire regions would be gripped by witch-hunting fever for decades. The Holy Roman Empire, Scotland and New England became notorious for their witch trial intensity. These weren't isolated incidents, they were sustained campaigns of supernatural terror. Speaking of terrifying, let's discuss plague doctors, who basically invented the creepiest costume in human history and wore it professionally. These guys looked like supernatural deathbirds, and that was intentional medical fashion. The plague doctor costume, long black coat, wide-brimmed hat, and that infamous bird-like mask, was designed to be intimidating. The beak was stuffed with herbs and perfumes because medieval people thought bad smells caused disease. Imagine opening your door to find what looks like a demonic raven telling you that you have the plague. Modern horror designers spend millions creating scary masks that don't look half as terrifying as actual medieval medical equipment. Jason's hockey mask, child's play. Michael Myers' face, adorable. The plague doctor mask was designed by people who genuinely believed they were fighting supernatural evil with fashion. The psychological impact was intentional. Plague doctors were meant to look otherworldly because people genuinely believed the plague was supernatural punishment. They were basically cosplaying as agents of divine judgment while trying to provide medical care. The irony is that plague doctor costumes probably made medical treatment more terrifying than the actual disease. Imagine being sick and having a literal nightmare bird person show up to poke you with a stick. That's not healthcare, that's psychological warfare. Today's Halloween costumes are mostly based on medieval fears that these people lived with daily. We pay money to dress up as things that kept medieval people awake at night in genuine terror. Finally, let's talk about ancient Halloween traditions, because the original Samhain festival makes modern Halloween look like a children's tea party. Ancient Celtic people believed that on October 31st, the boundary between the living and dead completely disappeared. Ancient Halloween wasn't about cute costumes and candy. It was about genuine supernatural terror. People believed that ghosts, demons, and fairies would roam freely, that the dead would return to visit their families, and that the entire supernatural world would invade reality for one night. Ancient people would light massive bonfires to ward off evil spirits, wear terrifying masks to confuse demons, and perform divination rituals to predict deaths in the coming year. Modern Halloween is basically ancient Halloween's cute younger sibling who went to therapy. The original jack-o'-lanterns were carved from turnips and were meant to be genuinely frightening protective talismans. People would carry them through the night to scare away supernatural threats. Modern pumpkin carving is basically medieval home security systems turned into arts and crafts. Ancient Halloween traditions included soul cakes feeding the dead mumming, disguising yourself from spirits, and wassailing appeasing supernatural entities. Every tradition was designed around the genuine belief that supernatural forces were actively trying to harm you. The transformation from genuine supernatural terror festival to commercialized family fun shows how we've domesticated medieval nightmares into entertainment. We've turned ancient protection rituals into party themes. So there you have it. Medieval people didn't just invent horror, they lived in it, breathed it, and turned daily survival into the most terrifying entertainment never intended for entertainment. Modern horror directors are basically medieval people with better budgets, and the luxury of knowing their monsters aren't real. The next time you watch a scary movie, remember that medieval people were living in horror films where the monsters were real. The special effects were your actual life, and there were no credits rolling to signal safety. If you enjoyed learning about history's most terrifying daily reality, smash that subscribe button and check out our other videos. Thanks for watching, and remember, medieval people would find your biggest fears adorably manageable.